There definitely is a social movement happening around community gardens, not only in New York City, but I think all over the world, definitely all over the United States. And this really has to do, I think, with a combination of things. One is that I think people are in general much more interested in self-sufficiency and eating healthy food and getting away from processed corporate agriculture and all of these kinds of things. But I think also it's just because there are so many community garden programs in different places now that many people are involved with community gardens, and as soon as you become involved with the community garden, you really see the potential that it has for so many things. I mean, horticulture therapy, emotional healing, getting to know neighbors and creating social neighborhood. I mean, there are so many things. In New York, we have now a lot of kids that grew up completely in community gardens. Their parents have been community gardening since they were born. And so there's many people who have experienced firsthand the value of that. And I think that that's also happening all over the country since it was really the late 70s when it started. So I think that that is part of it. And then I think that there's definitely recognition of the fact that this is a movement by the fact that the corporations are trying really hard to co-opt this right now. And if you Google community garden, the first thing you come up with is an advertisement for a snack cracker. And there's all these corporations reaching out to try to get information about how to sponsor community gardens and do things with community gardens. So there's a little scary part of that. But I think that in general, it's still a grassroots movement, and it has to do with people wanting to do things collectively and feeling like, you know, especially in a really capitalist society like here, or everywhere, I guess, these days, that doing something collectively really gives some value back to your life that's missing otherwise.
Diane Williams. I'm a professional social worker, health educator. I'm a Native American woman. I'm a tribe from Alaska called the Athabascan or Yukon River. But I guess they'd call me an urban Indian these days. I've lived in Oakland here for about 40 years. Wow. So some people call me a guerrilla gardener. I'm a mother. I'm a community activist, social justice activist. Pretty concerned about the earth these days, you know. Actually, most of the Indians, they say, are living in the cities these days. So it's important that people like myself, I suppose, that are working for social change and social justice are here to help the people and that. So yeah, it's a lot of fun to work in the yard. Come the spring is when it's really going to be fun to see these things jumping up here and how beautiful it'll be. You know, if we come from the earth and we go back to the earth, we certainly don't need to be just walking on concrete in between those periods of time, you know, and so I think we need to think of everything, including how we go back to the earth and have things more in harmony and, you know, have a global perspective instead of what we're doing in our own little individualistic, self-absorbed, greedy, stingy worlds, you know, and so we need to, you know, work together and work as a team with the earth, and so that's why I'm just blessed to be part of this little group here. So our medicine man said it the way I understand it. He says we're just here on this earth to help each other all we can, real simple. And so that's what I'm just endeavoring to do, and for me, just working in the earth and the ground is just, you know, I don't know, a fish in water, you know, it's just so wonderful. I have another friend that's coming here, though, is an Indian man from Mexico, a Totonaco Indian, and he's even cuter. He'll just look up to the buds and he'll be like, "Ah, look at this one, do you see this beautiful bud?" and he's just thrilled. But what a miracle, you know, all these beautiful things are. So it makes my day. It's just, you know, it puts me, how they say, in good relation to the earth, you know. So to me, it's, we don't know very good how to share. We just don't. We just don't. And so we're so rich, and we're so fat, and we're so sick. And, you know, a lot of people suffer from people just not sharing. We just have a history in my community, strong Indian women, of being connected to the earth. Just plain and simple being connected to the earth and, you know, growing things and giving and fresh fruits and vegetables. And so they're constantly trying to take down our sacred sites, constantly trying to disconnect us, I think, from the land. And we're just we're just not going to have it. We're just not going to have it. So, you know, every little bit of ground we fought for, all the treaties, everything, it seems like they've made a purposeful effort to break them all. So the word is no good, you know, as far as government to governments, and it's just not. There's a lot more land that needs to be secured, I can assure you.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot more land.
I'm Laura.
And I'm Vicente.
Okay, where are we here?
We're at Ignacio in Vicksburg at our community garden.
We always have 20 to 10 people here. There's always someone here.
I think gardening is kind of a new term also as well, because if you look at it, where people are from, they've always managed the land in some way. And if you say here in California, well, you know, anthropologists could say that people never gardened, but I mean, people planted oak trees and watched after oak trees and made sure they're okay in the same way that people that in Mexico, like where I'm from, like they planted corn or whatever. I mean, it's all the same thing. Or people in South Dakota, they didn't plant, maybe they relied more on the bison or the buffalo, and it's the same thing. It's a relationship. People take care of the buffalo so they can eat from it. I mean, it's taking care of what's around us and being respectful. So if you want to call that gardening, if you want to call that permaculture, whatever you want to call that, then that's fine. But I think the underlying basis is just being connected.
Our ancestors had that connection. That's why they were able to survive and maintain their ways for thousands of years. But we lost that connection, and just like and this is like reteaching us that we are part of a bigger system that's not just human.
Hi, my name is Cayman Fong. I'm a gardener in Zoo Garden and River Garden, and also the Queen's Botanical Garden and the Two Cover Garden in Queens.
You're all over.
Yes, I've gardened all over two boroughs. This garden is the important chance point in my life. When I was in my really downside, the period I was living in the shelter in Bronx, and one day I take a bus and I see the garden, so I take off the bus and I found out this is a community garden. I am a plant lover, so I asked the garden manager permission, allow me to join it, and they so nice to accept me as a wheelchair, so they gave me a raising bed and a fund, so I started gardening in here, and I was so sad at the time because I living in the shelter. I feel my life has no hope, so I tried to kill myself twice. And in here, I feel love, and because in here, everybody friends, gardeners, we have no waste, no colors. So I feel myself free and open. So I love this garden, and I love all community gardens. I immigrated from China when I was 42 years old, and so, but actually I'm start gardening in United States.
Okay.
So it has been like 10 years gardening experience. I was gardening in the front yard with cans because they didn't have land. So community garden, Zoo Garden is the first one, and I take the Zoo Garden as my lifesaver. This is my own plot. This is the feather melon here. And then from China,
Where, that's from China?
yeah, I brought the seeds from China, hiding the seeds.
So you're actually illegally bringing this?
Yes,
in. Okay.
this one is illegally because I couldn't find the seeds in here for 10 years. So I'm sorry. Global Garden is they gave 4 gardener extra plot to grow where they come from their country. And then I plant all Chinese variety in here. And this is the Cosperola. They contain a lot of vitamin A, and then it's good for the digestive system. I eat them every day and keep me healthy and taste really good. And this is the Chinese cabbage.
Okay. Yeah. I think I know this from the stores.
Yeah, this is Chinese cabbage, and this is beautiful white flower is Chinese leek. And then we can eat them, and then also the rest of them, if they let them grow, is a really good green manure.
I'm Edie Stone. I'm the director of the Green Thumb program, which is a division of the Department of Parks and Recreation. Our main purpose, which we're funded for, is to license unused parcels of city-owned property to community groups to build and manage community gardens. Of course, our mission has changed over time because there's about 300 gardens on public land in New York City right now. And out of these gardens, some are under parks jurisdiction, have been there for 25, 30 years. Some are brand new, some we're still acquiring new parcels from different city agencies. So it's all different. It goes from a garden that's completely established, is all ornamental and doesn't require basically anything from us, to an urban farm that might be just starting up. We have to provide soil and lumber and tools and like everything from the beginning.
Do you see the community gardens as public space?
Absolutely. I think that it's the most and special category of public space because it's community managed public space. It's something that I feel very strongly about, that this is the people's land because it's owned by the city, and that the city has a responsibility to provide that land, but let the people manage it themselves, as opposed to a really top-down structure where we tell them exactly what to build and exactly who to allow and exactly, how many. I mean, of course we have to say how many hours to be open, but they can decide which of those hours. I mean, we like to really keep it that the community managers really make all the important decisions. Their governance structure is determined completely by them. It's sort of a pure democracy. Of course, there might be a few dictators amongst the gardeners, but in general, it's very much determined by the community where the garden is, how they use that space. And our responsibility, or Green Thumb's responsibility, as I see it, is to make it as easy as possible for them to do that and provide them with the materials that they need to do that, but not to be involved in their day-to-day operation. Our budget is approximately $700,000 a year base, which is not very much in New York City. So of course that divides up to something like $100 per garden, but in practice that's not really what happens. Gardens that need more get more, and gardens that need less get less. From the time that I started working with gardens in the 90s until now, it's only been increasingly towards more recognition of the importance of gardens and more support for gardens, which is a good thing, I think. And I think that we're about to get to a point where that goes even further, because the mayor has a big plan for the environmental future of New York. It's called Plan NYC, which is a plan for what New York should look like in 2030, because that's when we will reach 10 million people. I guess that's the reasoning behind it. I don't know exactly, but they now want to include food security and community gardens as a part of that plan. So there will be, it's not a mandatory plan, but at least there will be a recognition in a citywide plan that community gardens are an element that should be included, which is a far cry from how it was in the 90s when they were considered temporary and only things that they were useful for taking care of land that you didn't want for anything else, and otherwise whenever there was any other project coming up, get rid of that garden and build that other project. This is a really pivotal time for community gardens right now because two things are happening simultaneously. One is that the whole idea of community gardens is extremely popular, and there's a lot of corporate interest in sponsoring them, and there's a lot of government interest in at least saying they're going to sponsor them. But at the same time, many of the NGOs who started this movement are running out of money. So I think that there's definitely a danger right now, at least in America, that the grassroots aspect of community gardening might disappear and be taken over by a really more top-down, either governmentally run or corporately sponsored sort of community gardening in name only. And I'm very concerned about that, which is one reason why I feel like by being the largest community gardening program in the country right now, Green Thumb, and having all of our land be city-owned, it has to stay that way. I mean, we have to set that precedent. People can do amazing things with tiny amounts of money. When Green Thumb first started, all we gave out was turkey wire, posts, and lumber. And people built the most beautiful gardens that you will ever see. Over time, of course, but people are very resourceful if you give them access to the land. And so I think that the idea that to build a good community garden, you need hundreds of thousands of dollars is absolutely the worst idea. I mean, it could actually ruin the movement that is very strong right now. So in that way, I guess I'm glad for the economic downturn for the time being, but I think that it's really important for people to recognize that it doesn't have to be fancy. It can be whatever you found on the street to make your garden out of. It's what you do there that's important. It's not what it looks like. You like that one?
Yes.
We're here to sort of say we love the community gardens, and the simplest way to keep New York City green is by keeping community gardens. Yep. So, but we're also here to recognize the best public space in New York City is well-used public space. So let's enjoy the public space in the community gardens. Make sure that the 282 gardens that were preserved under the Spitzer Agreement continue to be preserved. Let's continue to use the language of preservation.
Are sitting in the Bedford-Stuyvesant Haide Community Garden. The garden is located in Bedford-Stuyvesant, Brooklyn, New York. My name is Jeanette Fleming. I am the vice president of this community garden and the founder of our market. 2/3 of our garden is dedicated to food production. The garden sits on 2.076 acres of land. We have 43 members on the books as of today, which basically means that 43 low-income people in Bedford-Stuyvesant are growing food to subsidize their food budget at home. The garden is a community center. It's a sort of educational lab in the outdoors. The garden is here to preserve the agricultural heritage of Brooklyn. The garden has a history of advocacy work, named after Hattie Carthen, who was an environmentalist, an African-American environmentalist who worked in this neighborhood in the early 80s, in the 70s. It's a lot of women doing the tending of the gardens.
Okay.
But as far as advocating for the power and representing the work that you are doing, it's really admirable to sow the fields all day long. Who is speaking for those women? Okay. How are they organizing to be represented? how are they getting resources to do their work? There is something else that has to go on in terms of who leads. It's one thing to work the garden. Who leads the garden? Feminine leadership in the garden. How are women respected in the garden? Where are the women's programs? We do need to start a scholarship for girls, for minority girls and women who want to study this, who want to understand the land. We have to have a place for that, and it doesn't exist now. It does not exist now. So we want to see situations where there's land tenureship for women's groups. That's power to me. Or how many women are using power tools in your gardens to build? It wouldn't be such a big thing when we did it if it was an everyday occurrence. Not every time I go to pick up a tool, a man says, "Oh no, Miss Fleming, let me get that. I don't want that. Get away from me. I want to use my tool." If all those women who are engaged in the fields came together and organized to understand their power, then we can have a shift.
Okay.
If we had conferences where we got those women out to teach, that could be a shift in power. If those women remain and die in the fields without being represented, and someone else is getting funding for all these women's work, this is not power to women. Fresh food desert is a classification that has been imposed by the federal government. It basically is self-explanatory, which means that people in these communities have no limited access to fresh food. So it means that their access is to processed foods mostly. And so we have the phenomenons in the urban cities of bodegas, which are small corner stores that were set up to be convenience stores. These convenience stores have now become the supermarkets and the places for shopping by most of the community residents in low-income communities. So what that does is it predisposes them to have to purchase and use their subsidies or food stamps or WIG checks, purchasing low-quality foods that hardly have the basic nutrition that is needed for human health. So with that phenomenon, the federal government looked at it and said, okay, these are fresh food deserts. So last year, here we are starting a market in a lot that used to be a trash lot. The market engages teenagers, which you already know. Last year, in the first year, we were able to hire 7 teenagers to work in the market and paid them a stipend. So they learned about agriculture and earned in the market. Economic empowerment. So when I look at who gets paid, who is empowered, that makes sense. When I look at the full picture, then all of the work makes sense. So we're doing food justice work. But how can you come out for fresh food if it's not safe in your neighborhood? When you introduce people to each other, the violence goes down. Public safety is a precursor to any kind of justice. So this year we started blocking off the streets, and you were at drum class, and you saw the children from the buildings jumping in and out of the pool alongside my granddaughter, and you saw how excited they were about drawing and playing hopscotch. It's working. It's not a Band-Aid. It's something deep and organic that you have to work to heal. The garden also hosts cooking demonstrations. I myself am a community food educator and have been doing that task in the community for 8 or so years. You look at your recipe, you're going to see it's a really simple salad. You can just use this stale bread along with any 5 veggies you find in your refrigerator. Throw it together with balsamic vinegar and herbs, and voila, in 10 minutes we have a special salad. Less than 200 years ago, all of us cooked in community. Now we don't know our neighbors. Now we are suddenly really very busy, and we can't even cook. And a lot of people that are oppressed by either poverty or violence or any other socioeconomic factors that we could think about. Some of our people are living in this constantly elevated state of stress every single day. So we don't know what it's like to go on a vacation and to come back and to do this. We are in these circumstances day in, day out, locked in, unless we choose to remove ourselves like we have today. And that can cause stress and predispose us to having heart conditions. Laughing helps to soften up the heart. So in some indigenous cultures, they laugh without a reason. They don't have to go to a comedy club for jokes. It's an exercise that they do to invoke the happy Buddha. So I want us to try it. We're in Bed-Stuy, but the happy Buddha is everywhere. So I just want us to laugh for no reason and clear this whole market here. Let's do it. No, she's making me laugh. You can approach heart health simply, or you can make it an elaborate affair that you don't understand, that only doctors understand. Today I also made a sorrel drink. That also has a direct, anything that makes you happy, rose water, rose powders, anything that takes you the opposite way than something that stresses your heart. I invite you to taste the watermelon salad. The ingredients are watermelon, cucumbers, goat feta cheese, and I put that because that helps us to drag away some toxicity. Goat milk helps the body to release uric acid, which is an acid that is formed through stress. And cayenne pepper. Very simple. There's no salt in there. I left all of the watermelon seeds because watermelon seeds are incredibly good for your health. When we purchase seedless watermelons and we're feeling, really happy about ourselves as though we have evolved and we are now civilized, so now we're using seedless watermelons, we've really deviated from what our ancestors did. They needed those seeds to clean out their insides. And last of all, you are going to add love to the salad. Yeah, love is the secret ingredient. So I'm going to appeal to you, community, to send some love to the salad.
Send it. Send the love.
So I just want to share with you as a community gardener that there is so much power that is in your hands that I want you to really understand that we are the urban farmers and take that seriously. Community gardens are more than places of recreation. Community gardens are places to engage your community like this about health and about justice, about food justice, about social justice, about all the justices that she's talking about. It's a place where you can restore the power back to your community residents. So, anybody else has anything deep in their belly?
It's a revolution.
Yes. And the revolution will be cultivated.
That's right.
My name is Kami Podakuchi, and I'm the market manager of the Wayne State University Farmers Markets, and I'm also an associate professor of urban planning. On average, we get about 1,000 customers every week. We have 13 stands today. We are very proud that we have 3 stalls in which produce grown in Detroit is featured. the Grown in Detroit cooperative pulls produce from gardeners across the city and they sell as a cooperative, so that someone who grows 20 tomatoes doesn't have to be here for the entire market. They can just drop their tomatoes, get a receipt, and then get paid at the end of the month. You know, we have Green Toe Gardens that sells honey from hives across the city and the region. And then we have farmers that come from an average of a 100-mile radius. Well, Detroit, as you know, has had its fortunes tied to the development of the automobile industry, and so it rose with the rise in the automobile industry, and now it's seen its flip side of that as well. Has the automobile industry has faded quite a bit from its heyday. A third of the city to a half of the land in the city is the number of parcels are vacant, and so the numbers are anywhere from 60,000 more or less parcels of land that are available.
I'm Catherine Underwood, and I am a land use planner with the City of Detroit City Planning Commission. 5 years ago, we couldn't even use the word agriculture. We had to say community garden because it wasn't hip and cool then. So they were worried about smells and rats and all kind of things that they thought community gardens might cause. And then they felt it was a slippery slide, and they said the next thing you'll be talking about is chickens. Well, we already have chickens, and in fact, keeping chickens and bees is very, very popular in the city. And there's a specific code that says you can't have farm animals, including chickens. But there are a lot of people that have chickens, and like I said, everything now is all under the radar. In fact, there was a workshop earlier in the summer on keeping chickens, and 200 people showed up for a workshop to do something that is specifically illegal in the city. So what I like about Detroit and Detroiters is that with all that's going on with regard to land, the open space and the abandoned buildings, because the city doesn't know or hasn't come up with a solution, people aren't waiting. They are coming up with creative ways to deal with their environment. What is unique and really interesting that's going on in Detroit is going on a community level and not on a government level. What troubles me about the sustainability movement is that it is being defined by white middle-class educated folks for the most part. The misperception that black people aren't interested in sustainability. Well, if you go to the average person that doesn't know that language, or isn't in the know with that, they're going to say no, or they're going to not know what you're talking about. And that's why I think language is so important. But the fact is that a lot of poor people live sustainably already because they don't have a choice to overconsume and to use a lot of energy. And so they have to be creative in their living every day. So, maybe they're not driving a hybrid car and have cork floors, but they're hanging their things out to dry because they don't have a choice. They're passing down clothes or sharing clothes or going to resale shops because they don't have the money to go to Patagonia and buy something that's made out of recycled plastic. So in order for the sustainability thing to really work, we have to find a way that everybody feels like they're a part of it and it's not separated by class.
And do you feel this is happening in Detroit? That do you have a strategy there to incorporate?
There's talk about it. I still think it's too much talk in terms of calling it sustainability or transition movements or all of these things that people that are not well read or educated or interested in that aren't able to connect to. And I think that that's a challenge in Detroit because what we have is a lot of young, educated, middle-class whites that are coming to Detroit because they see an opportunity to experiment with living, you know, maybe trying to live off the grid or doing the whole thing with the urban agriculture. So they see it as an empty canvas, and they don't always honor or recognize the people that have been there in the neighborhoods for a long time struggling. So they'll come into the neighborhood with good intentions and things that they want to do, but then there's a clash that happens because the language is different. The people that are coming in and talking about transition movement and sustainability and carbon footprint aren't recognizing what's already going on in the neighborhood that's a part of that stuff, but may be defined differently or looked at differently. So that's a challenge we have to have as we repopulate the city and as we figure out different ways that people can live in neighborhoods in the way they've been living. We have to bridge that class and race divide still.
I'm chairman of the Detroit Black Community Food Security Network. We have the largest agricultural project in Detroit, which is called D-Town Farm. It's currently about 2 acres. We're expecting to expand it soon. And we use organic techniques to grow primarily vegetables and some fruits. And we're concerned about 2 things. 1, providing greater access to fresh and healthy food for our community. And 2, creating a model of how the vast amounts of unused and underutilized land in the city of Detroit can be put to productive use. And then also we're very concerned about creating a sense of self-determination within the black community. I think that in addition to that, another very important thing to do is kind of this idea of building community and defining what we're for. In the 1960s, lots of people protested against what we were against. But the question is, what type of world do we actually want to see? And so by engaging people in a proactive way, we're actually creating the world that we want to bring into being. And also, very importantly, what happens is that when people begin to involve themselves in gardening or farming, they get a sense of their own power. Oppression tends to give people a sense of disempowerment or a sense of hopelessness, that there's these very powerful forces that control the world and that there's nothing that we can do about it. And so the simple act of gardening, of growing food, of seeing that through our own labor and through the combination of our labor and the natural elements, the rain and the sun and the seeds, that we can actually produce food to feed ourselves. And so that's a tremendously empowering act. So when that flame is lit inside of people and they see their own power individually and collectively, then it develops the potential and the capacity for us to begin to make changes in our communities in other ways. We also have a youth program which is called the Food Warriors Youth Development Program that functions at 3 African-centered schools in Detroit. And we think it's very important that we develop a generation of young people who see agricultural work in a different light. One of the challenges with black people in America, in fact, black people in the Western Hemisphere, because of the experience of enslavement and sharecropping, we tend to view agricultural work as a work to empower somebody else. And so that's a problem that's particular to people of African descent. And then we also have the problem, which is a global problem, of urbanization, where people view living in the city as being somehow cooler or hipper than living in the rural areas. So throughout the world, you have this flight of people from the rural areas to the cities. So we're trying to reframe agriculture work as an act of self-determination as opposed to an act to enrich somebody else. So public education, or what we call consciousness raising, is an important part of what we do. Yep. We've changed the dialogue in the city of Detroit about urban agriculture because many of us come to this food work from a background of having been active participants in the Black liberation movement. And so we've kind of been able to marry the Black power movement and the green movement and bring a very sharp critique of white supremacy and white privilege to the work that we do. And so that the interjection of that element into the conversation of urban agriculture has changed the dialogue in the city of Detroit. And now some of the organizations that are primarily white organizations are now looking internally at themselves and beginning to do an analysis in terms of how they play into this whole question of white supremacy and white privilege, particularly in a city that is 80-some% African American. We're participants in the monthly discussions on, it started out being called Race, Food, and Resistance, and now we're calling it Undoing Racism in the Detroit Food System. Okay. So we're active participants. In fact, one of our members, Dr. Monica White, was one of the key organizers of that and initiators of that. There are other black groups that do that, but I don't typically hear that kind of discussion in the larger food security movement. And so, I think that's a very important part of the discussion that we need to have, because the production of food is tied to land and who owns the land and who controls the land. And so we can't talk about who controls land without talking about the development of what we now call the United States and imperialism and the kind of settler colonialism that occurred throughout the Western Hemisphere. So we have to have a historical analysis to really understand how we got to this point and also to understand how we forge realistic solutions.
Welcome to D-Town Farm. I am Jackie Hunt, and I am the assistant farm manager. Well, this shiitake mushrooms, we think we have about 5,000 shiitake mushroom plants back there. It takes shiitake about a year and a half to start producing, but once they start producing, they will produce for 5, 10, 15 years. And the way you do it is you drill a hole in the wood, and you put they call it the mycelium. It's either in a capsule or something. You put it in the hole and you cover it over with beeswax, and you set it up and let it do whatever it's going to do. And then in a year or two, you have shiitake mushrooms. We didn't get that far yet. They have these movies about 2012 is going to be the end, and there will be nothing, and we'll all be gone, and it'll be smoke and stuff. I said, this dead stuff, right, all by itself, with no help from anybody, can produce a nutrient-efficient product like mushrooms, which is also vitamin A and vitamin B and E and X, Y, Z and all those minerals and everything. Mushrooms are very, very nutritious. Now, if this dead stuff gets together and produces this nutritious product, that means that other things that might be moving around that might not have gone away will have something to feed on, right? That means that this whole cycle will start all over again. We think that it's, they're telling you in the movies that it's coming to an end. Now, it might take them a couple of days to get back to where we are now, but they can do that. The equipment or whatever it is, it's already here. It's already ready. The planet is already prepared to replace itself after we do whatever it is that humans do. Like Detroit, they're talking on the news and everything. They're talking about how it's going away, and stuff is just coming in, filling up the space that's going away. It's wonderful. Anyway, that's why I think mushrooms are the most exciting thing that we're doing over here.
I am Mona Mossberg, and we're here at the Udville Schoolyard in Berkeley, California, where I am one of 4 garden teachers. I've been working here for 3 years, and sort of just work alongside 6th, 7th, and 8th graders here at King Middle School, helping with helping them learn all different aspects of gardening, from planting seeds to weeding to building trellises, harvesting, propagation, all different aspects of gardening.
Nice.
I'm queer, gender queer. Queer folks have shied away from staying on the farm, you know, because it's often been a place where they haven't been accepted, and now it seems like there's a real movement to sort of return to this work, to return to the land, and to make, you know, farming a safe place for queer people, because it really is, and it really, you know, should be. People want to be farmers. You know, I think queer people want to know how to be self-sufficient and to grow food. I mean, I think that it has a lot to do with expressing ourselves, you know, like gardens are places where you can experiment and be yourself and just like be in nature, have your hands in the dirt, and where, you know, this is something actually that Karen Washington said to me. She was like, when I asked her about being queer and growing food, and she was just saying, you know, the plants aren't asking me if I'm queer. Nobody, like, they don't care. The chickens don't care if I'm queer, you know? So it's sort of this place where you can just kind of be however you are, which I think a lot of queer folks seek out, because it's not always like that, you know, in sort of this like dominant mainstream culture. Yeah, queer people are finding another alternative form of family in gardening and in farming. It's being queer is about being fluid. I think for a lot of people, which is a really great metaphor for how gardens are. Things are always changing, you know, things don't stay the same in the garden. And I believe that people also don't stay the same. People are complicated and subject to change and should be able to change and be however they are. I am this garden, and this garden is me, you know. Gardens are just reflections of who we are. And for the most part, we have domesticated all of these plants, and they serve a purpose for humans, you know. So I feel very connected to a lot of the plants here. And I think that there's a lot of queerness in the natural world that people don't often recognize or think about as queer. If you're not queer, maybe you don't look for it, you know, like, I don't know, asexual propagation. If you really stop and think about it, that's pretty queer, you know, taking cuttings from plants and asexually propagating them. That's pretty outrageous if you think about that. I think it's really neat. Or grafting, you know, grafting different kinds of apple trees onto one tree. That's really weird and amazing that you can do that sort of thing. Yeah, I guess I see a lot of myself in gardens and on farms and in the growing world, because it just does what it wants to do. You know, it just is, and I just want to be too. And I think a lot of queer folks just want to be.
Is there a larger percentage of queer people within gardening and farming? You know, farming, I don't know, but within urban gardening and landscaping, there is. Honestly, there is. And there's a lot of us, and I think it feeds me on different levels. It's independent, you know, I don't have to answer to many people except my community, you know, and that serves me in lots of ways. And you get to be out in nature, you get to be outdoors, and you get to do a diversity of tasks, you know, and that's awesome. And it's really interesting how many people more and more where I'm like, oh, he's straight, you know. For years I think this gardener's straight. No, he wasn't. But, you know, and I love that because I make assumptions everybody makes assumptions, and they're not always right, and that's the best, being proven wrong. I mean, right now they're so siloed, you know, this is the queer movement, and that's the farming movement, and that's the environmental justice movement. But it's like, you know, we are all working on similar issues on different sides of the same problems. And I think that the solutions come when we get really creative and start working together more creatively and thinking outside of the box. I've felt excluded from environmental discussions before because they felt heteronormative, and that doesn't resonate with me, and I know it doesn't resonate with many people, even some heterosexuals. So I think when we bring in our perspectives, our queer perspectives, our different perspectives, and we have the strength to voice them, you know, not only does that provide that actual literal perspective that we're talking about, but it also models and exemplifies that we don't have to fit into this movement in that way. We don't have to fit into, I like to think of my inclusion and my participation in the queer movement and the gardening movement as a way of supporting our communities. And I think that a lot of queer people, activist queer people, may see gardening as a very dynamic way to do that, because it's not a flat thing. You know, this isn't a single issue. It's many issues coming together. It's environment, it's social justice, it's environmental justice, it's class and race issues come up and get to be examined and explored and broken down, and that's what needs to happen for the whole society in order to move forward with all of these different systems. And you know, the food system is not sustainable right now, and hopefully we'll get to the point where it is, but I really do see the queer participation in the food movement. We are a catalyst for change. We are an outlier in society in general, and maybe even within the food movement too, and that provides us with a space that we can, you know, we don't have to conform with what people think, even if it's within the organic movement. When I started Rainbow Chart Alliance, it was the first ever queer, you know, gardener space that they had ever had. But, you know, nature teaches us that there are so many ways to be. And using nature as that example, we are the living proof of that. We can be happy in different kinds of relationships. We can thrive in different kinds of relationships. And I think that's one of the voices that the queer movement in farming can bring. You know, it's not just one way, one kind of relationship. There's so many relationships. Relationship between nature and culture, relationship between people, relationship between plants and people.
Well, hello, and my name is Maria Keating, and we're at the City Farmer Garden in Vancouver, BC, Canada. So I'm the bug lady at the garden here, and I'd like to talk to people about the insect life in the garden. For me, I think it's really exciting to talk about insects because there's so much that gets overlooked. The mainstream media, you know, they take a lot of their horror movie films and they convert them into, what's going on in a garden is like, devoid of insects is a better planet. Everybody's seen a ladybug. When I start off showing them a ladybug larva, like this little guy here, big guy, you know, they always are, it's a bad guy. And we don't understand a life cycle of a simple insect that is kind of the mascot for gardening. And I think we all are becoming very vastly aware of the condition of pollinators in the world and all the effects that what we do have on pollinators. And I think the insects can really show us a lot of what's going on in our backyard, what's going on in you know, our province, our country, even on our continent. I like to say it's the fairy garden. You know, that insect life that sparks mystery, I think, has a lot to do with what I like to sort of pass on to the kids, that mystical side of, wow, look at all these different plants and all these little flowers that are so different and so beautiful in your backyard. How did all of this get here. Like so much differences, so much diversity. It's just really something to kind of watch, and it's not just a backdrop, but it's something you kind of want to get into and explore and be adventurous. And I think that's a whole part of becoming who we are as humans, is finding that soul for ourselves. And in a garden, it's just a perfect backdrop. And the soul of the garden is, what we do with the plants and how it inspires us to grow and create and to teach others. I'm pretty much doing this garden with a lot of help from a lot of volunteers, and a lot of help from nature and the birds dropping seeds. There's a lot of sort of surprises that come up in the garden. There's a lot of surprise visitors, both people and not. We've got, cats and raccoons and, birds that, it's just so much going on here. So it's just I'm just one little part of a very big garden. I think those stories from what we've done in the past to what we do now is really important, and urban agriculture makes it happen in front of us. It's not somewhere far off, it's right there. It's guiding us to where our future's going to.
That
was new.